welcome again to the Write Project podcast. This is a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture here on 93.5 FM or online at chmr.ca. Wherever you're listening from, we're happy to have you. I am here again as part of the Write Project podcast. Joining me today is Jon Dobbin. He is a local author from Mount Pearl. He had 2 stories published in the Chillers from the Rock anthology back in April 2018. He has also placed several times in the Kitsora Flash Photography Contest, which is a contest that celebrates flash fiction of 250 words or less. He was also the winner of the 48-hour writing marathon 2017. So in the last year and a half, he's slowly built up a bit of a pedigree in the local writing scene. And now he's here on the Write Project podcast. He's made it.
Yay.
Yay.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Anytime. So what have you been working on lately?
Lately, I have been working on a new novel that should be complete, I'm hoping, by the end of this summer.
Okay.
It's a fantasy, kind of a different take on a fantasy novel that is kind of rounding out to be a pretty fun little project that I took on that I didn't actually intend to make a novel out of. So
okay.
It's gonna be
what
fun.
was it? What did it start out to be?
It started out as a bit of an idea that I had from years and years ago. It was actually started out as kind of like a dream that I had about a flying castle.
Okay.
And people on it. And I just wrote a couple of short stories based around that idea, people interacting with it or seeing a flying castle. And it kind of evolved from there. Built characters around it. Came up with a couple of different main characters, and it's still kind of evolving now. So hopefully by the time I finish it, I have a good direction to go with it.
Sounds cool. Sounds like it's your own little, like, Dark Tower.
Yes, yeah. I've read all of Stephen King's almost all of his Dark Tower books. I kind of got waylaid at 5, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
5's a weird spot to get waylaid at. What would get you waylaid there?
I don't know. It was weird. 5 is the Wolves of Calla, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's a very action-heavy book.
Yeah, I started reading it, and it's weird because of all the things to get waylaid by. An action-heavy book is weird to get waylaid by, but I don't know what it was. Maybe, I think when I was originally reading them, I was in university, and I was reading them because I was working in the library here. And during the summer, it was easy to read books because we didn't have so many people here, so I'd read lots and lots of books, and I read up to 5, and I think 5 was probably the end of my time in the library, and so I just
makes it sound like you're walking to your death. Like, I've watched too much Doctor Who. You're like, it's the end of my time in the library.
Yeah. And that kind of was actually what happened, because then I went into studies and stuff like that, so I probably put it aside, something like that. It's been so long now, I can't remember, but... Yeah.
So you've got a book coming out in May 2019, I've seen announced fairly recently on social media, called The Starving, is that correct?
Yeah, that's the tentative title.
What are some other titles that you've thought of?
The initial title was Untitled.
Okay.
And then it moved to Hunger, and now it's The Starving.
I gotta say, coming up with titles is probably my least favorite part of the novel writing process.
I am the worst.
No, I'm the worst. Have you read some of my titles?
I have.
They're bad.
But you got titles. I can never come up with titles.
That's true, but like on my 6th book, Ignorance is Bliss, that's got to be the most generic thing on the planet. Like, if you Googled Ignorance is Bliss without my name on it, it would be like the 500th page of Google.
I don't know.
The Starving's not much better. I mean, no one's ever going to Google The Starving without the words Jon Dobbin after it and actually get the book.
Well, I mean, even my titles in Chillers from the Rock, Man of Fire, and The Chosen, they're pretty standard as well.
Yeah, we had a problem early on. One of our authors, she's now a partner with Engine Books. Her book of short stories was called Compendium, and Ellen Curtis, and she thought that was very avant-garde. I'm like, okay, but you can't Google it. Like,
no.
Everything has a compendium. Like,
yeah,
Star Wars, the compendium. X, the compendium. It's a good book collection, though.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm really bad at coming up with titles. I don't know why I find it so hard, but it's just something that plagues me.
So what's The Starving about?
The Starving is a Western, or a Weird West tale, I guess you could say, if you want to go into the subgenre of it, about a group of mercenaries who are hunting an Indian, as they would call it back then in the 1800s, throughout Colorado.
Yep.
And they bring him to a town to turn him in for his reward, and the town is plagued by death, and they decide to help investigate.
And that was the one that actually won the first draft of that, or the initial chunk of the first draft of that was what actually won the 48-hour novel writing contest.
Yeah.
It actually tied for first with Kelly Powers' manuscript. She was on the show a few weeks ago.
Yep.
Yep.
That's the one. I had made a goal that once I won that, and then I went into Nanowrimo for that year, 2017, and I said, okay, I'm going to get 50,000 words added to whatever I've written, and then that's going to be my novel. So it pretty much took me a year to start, complete, and then edit it, and send it out to get some readers to take a look at it and see if it's actually good.
Can I ask you some stuff about Nanowrimo, even though you're not officially involved in it, you're just a participant and stuff that. I participated for the first time last year. I was always hesitant because people who were involved would ask me and be like, hey Matt, you should participate in Nanowrimo. It's a month where you try to write a novel in a month. And my initial reaction was, you mean like I do every month? Like that's... You know how much I'd love to write a novel every month? That's my actual goal. It seemed a little bit to me like someone coming up to a teacher and being like, hey, you should take part in Natural Teaching Month, that you teach classes all month. And it's like, yeah, I do that anyway. But it actually is very good. And I find it's a very good system, and I like the goal tracking and stuff like that keeps me on goal. The encouragement stuff from the community, I acknowledge, is good for other people. I tend to write in a bubble kind of thing, so I just kind of post up and then ignore it, because for me writing's a solitary thing. I know a few authors. Chelsea B, who was on here last week, she said that for a long time, until the last year or so, she wrote exclusively during NaNoWriMo. I'm wondering if that's a part of the Newfoundland experience. There's the Newfoundland experience and there's the NaNoWriMo experience. And where they cross-section is, we have a lot of seasonal employment here, be it in the education industry or the fisheries industry or anything like that. I wonder if that helps that part of it, where it's like, I am a seasonal writer in that I write during November, and that is all for some people.
It's hard for me to say, because I kind of took it on more as a excuse to write. It's just another goal. The way I approach writing is a little bit different. I approach it like it's a video game. That's how I'm able to keep my word counts up. That's how I'm able to write every day. That's why I need... And NaNoWriMo, as you said, has those like visual goals that you can see. You meet a goal.
A lot.
You meet a goal every day, 1,600 words or something like that daily is what you need to meet meet your 30,000 or 50,000 goal. And for me, it's like those achievements, right? The bleep bloop. Suddenly an achievement, and that's kind of the way I write, and I found it really motivating to get me through. But in terms of seasonal, I can see why it would be something that Newfoundlanders may be more attracted to around that, because we always have something else to do. And there's always something else that we could be doing at that time, whether it's day jobs, whether it's dealing with kids, anything else. So then when we have a month that actually gives us an excuse to say, hey, let's sit down and write, then I can see why that would happen for some people.
It is a good reason to say, okay, no, this month, right now, I'm not going to put it off till tomorrow because it's November 1st.
And it's only a 30-day month, it's not a 31-day. So
that would be inexcusable. There's no way.
It'd be too hard for 31 days in a row.
Really, it should be February.
28 days. But it's a great little excuse to get out there and actually try and write. I remember when I first heard about it years ago, I thought it was ridiculous. I didn't think it was possible to write a novel in a month.
Oh, no, it is.
Yeah, well, I succeeded this time around.
You can write a novel in a week.
Yeah, the way I'm writing lately, probably.
10 grand a day, and then they would take the weekend off.
So it's certainly possible. But when I first started, when I heard about it, I thought it was just astronomical. It was just too outside of my league kind of thing. But I think the actual goals that they set daily, and if you can follow those, and the encouragement, like you mentioned, from other writers,
Yeah.
I think that really helps as well. So
my 7th novel, Becoming, that was written in 3 days.
wow.
Yeah, that was. It's a short novel. It's only about 50,000 words. Like it's on the short end of what counts as a novel.
Yeah.
40,000 being the cutoff.
Yeah, I like to write quite a bit.
You're a part of a bunch of local writing groups and writing classes and a bunch of stuff like that.
It just goes along with what I've been saying already about the encouragement and helping to write. I actually joined a writing group 2 or 3 years ago now called Rocket Writers. And it had a few different people involved in it at the time, but it was kind of at the point where a lot of the established writers that had initially started that group had either moved on or didn't have the time to put into going to that writing group. So it was myself and a friend and a couple of the regulars from there that would meet, and then it kind of just petered off a little bit. People couldn't make it and things like that. So then myself and John Mercer, my friend, we decided to make our own group called Write Club Newfoundland.
Yep.
That's
a cool title.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like a 90s boy band.
I'm sure it was taken before. It has the little soap from Fight Club.
Oh my lord.
Anyway, we decided to create that, and we opened it up to the Genre Writers of Atlantic Canada Facebook group.
Yep.
And we had some real success. We had Angela Churchill come in first, and she brought in her sister-in-law, Shelley Churchill, and Stacey Oakley, another local writer, came in. Yep. And eventually it's grown pretty big right now. We have Amanda Labonte, Chelsea B., Sam Bauer. All of those people regularly show up to our groups, and it's not like any other writing group that I've been a part of, in that you normally would write something, bring it in, either read it or have it passed out ahead of time so someone can talk about it.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We go in, we write what we want to write, we chat about things, we chat about writing, and then we leave. It's kind of more of a social thing, but we're supporting each other. We've done word sprints lately at these meetings because we found that we were chatting a little bit too much for a little while.
Yeah.
And so we're doing more word sprints.
So Amanda was there.
Yeah, Amanda. But it's always fun chats. It's nice
don't get me wrong. Yeah.
It's great to interact.
I have business meetings with Amanda, and it's always like, all right, 5 minutes and then 3 hours of chatting, which is always wonderful.
Yeah. But it is a really good writing group to be a part of. And again, like I started to say before I introduced it all, it really helps you to keep on track. It's once a week. We meet Thursdays. We meet around 7 or 7:30, and you can stay for as long as you want, but we usually stay for a couple of hours. And
you can stay there till like 8 in the morning?
Well, I don't know. Whenever the place closes, I guess.
Okay.
We meet at Element on Topsail Road.
I heard as much. Yeah.
It does open. I think it stays open pretty late because it's part bar. But yeah, we stay for quite a while, and we leave whenever we want, kind of thing. So it's not really strenuous or a lot of pressure is there, but it does keep you on track because you want to show up and you want to talk about any of the things that you've done over the week. Or
have you considered lying? Like I wrote 80,000 words this week.
Well, I do that sometimes.
Yeah, of course,
but not all the time.
Of course.
But it's also a great way that if you are having a hard time with a stumbling block that you're working on. For instance, the novel that I'm working on now about the flying castle, I was having a hard time with one of the characters and his motivation, I guess, to do what I wanted them to do. And so I went in and I brought that up to the group, and I had a lot of really great suggestions. Angela actually sent me a bunch of different YouTube videos on structure and motivation for characters and things like that, and where they come from. So, like, that is the kind of thing we get into, and we do read aloud. We do have our pieces that we read and get feedback from, but it's not a necessity.
Yeah.
As opposed to the writing classes that I've been a part of, which I really like, because where the absence of structure is there from our writing groups, there is a lot more structure in those writing classes where every week you have to have a certain amount written, you bring it in, you have already sent it out to people, they are already, after reading it, making their own comments on it, and I find that that's really helpful.
Really?
Yeah, good or bad comments, I find that they really push you forward to try and improve on your writing. And not only that, but seeing other people's writing and see the little tricks that they use, the little words, turns of phrases that they use, I find that those really kind of motivate you to keep writing.
Yeah. I have yet to be in one of those, and I have yet to find someone who doesn't have some kind of magic to what they do. Like, there's always stuff that needs to be honed, but there's always, like, it's either the way they turn the phrase, or just the way they naturally know structure. Like, structure's hard.
Yeah.
Structure, like the structure of a novel.
Yeah, I'm not big on structure personally. I don't think about structure when I'm writing. I just kind of start writing and hope that it fits. So a recent writing course that I took actually focused on structure, and that really kind of helped me guide a little bit, take me a little bit out of my comfort zone to get there. But it was interesting because me and you have talked about this before, and that everybody in a class like that has their own kind of strengths that they bring in.
Yeah.
Some of us are really good at realism, getting people right into the actual novel, whereas others have very great descriptive writing, have really good focus on characters. You know, everybody has their own types of strengths, and it's really good.
Yeah.
You learn a lot from that.
Yeah.
And also, to go back to what we were talking about in terms of building on your reasons to write, that gives you a structure. You know, that gives you another reason. Like we said, Nanowrimo is the month of writing. But if you're signed up for a class, that holds you accountable. Every week you go, you have to have something written.
I think when it comes to structure, I think it's something that you should learn but not worry about too much. Like, the hope is that it becomes almost second nature, where it's like, okay, well, this needs to happen. Your stuff was fairly structured from the start, from what I've read. It goes back to, there's a reason that publishers only ask for, or most publishers only ask for, the first 3 chapters of a novel, and it's because that is usually the first 2 or 3 beats of an 8-beat story structure. And if the authors haven't done a good job of setting that up yet, then you kind of get the hint that the whole thing's going to be a mess. And it's like, okay, nope, don't bother asking for the rest of this. We don't need to waste 100,000 words on reading this, sadly. Structure's weirdly important. You almost wish it wasn't, because it kind of disillusions a part of it. But to me, it's a second draft problem. Like first draft, you is the imaginative stage, and then you sit down, you plug your book into the structure, and you go, okay, what have I done?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like with me, my basic idea when I first write is, okay, the 3-act kind of thing, or just the conflict slope. You know, it's like, okay, it starts off slow, we get a big conflict, and then it ends. Resolution. You know, that's what I kind of focus on. You know, you want to see I keep hearing Stewie talking to Brian and Family Guy about his novel, and you know, has the character
friends become enemies, enemies become friends.
That kind of spiel when I'm writing, I hear that. It's like, okay, has my main character actually done any change? Has anything changed from the beginning to the end? What caused that change?
So important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what's the point of having a character that doesn't change? It's just a robot that is not interesting at all.
Speaking of, what are your influences? Like, what writers do you really admire the writing of?
I got to start with Stephen King.
I knew you would.
Yeah, Stephen King is one of my big time. And it's funny though, because I came to Stephen King fairly late. I came to him in university. I didn't start reading him when I was a kid. I know a lot of my friends read him when they were like in high school. And
actually, the first book I bought when I went to University of Calgary, very briefly, was his short book of short stories, Everything's Eventual.
Yeah, which is a great collection of short stories.
It is.
The thing with Stephen King though is you'll never get to the end of his book list. Like, he just continues to write. He's got
60 out now. I think I've read 50 of them. I'm always a few books behind because I'm like, oh, well, let's go do this now. Oh, what do you mean while I was writing a book, he put out 3?
Yeah. He put out 2, one with his son, one with another writer, and his own. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Which son? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite?
Right now, Salem's Lot is my favorite Stephen King book. That's kind of always hit home for me, I guess.
What's it about?
Salem's Lot is about a quiet little town in the U.S.
In Maine?
In Maine.
Yeah. Shocking.
No kidding.
Wait, hold on. It's a Stephen King book set in Maine. Stop the presses.
Yeah. And it's actually called Jerusalem's Lot. A writer, a main character, who's a writer, go figure, goes back to his hometown of Salem's Lot to kind of start writing again.
Yeah.
Work on a project. And he goes there and he starts interacting with a lot of the people there, for good or bad. And a vampire comes and sets up shop.
Of course.
It's basically what would happen if Dracula showed up.
Yeah. What if Dracula was in Maine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But aside from Stephen King, when I first started writing, I read a lot of local authors. Lisa Moore.
Okay.
She was one of the first people to influence me to write. I mean, I've always written as a kid, you know, I've always liked to write, but she was one of the people that really kind of pushed me to say, okay, I want to write a little bit more.
Cool.
Other than that, I've recently come across a couple of different writers that I should have discovered a while ago, such as Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
His Graveyard book is fantastic. I don't know if you've read that, but that is...
I have not. Last one I read from him was Trigger Warning.
I've never read that
Book
one.
of short stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, his Norse mythology is really good as well, which is his take on actual stories from Norse mythology. But the Graveyard book is great. It's
cool.
great. He has a great way of taking stories and making them seem like fairy tales.
Yes.
And it's
Coraline is very much like that.
Yeah. And what else have I been reading? I've recently kind of applied my way to write to reading more, so I look for achievements, and it makes me read a lot more now.
Yeah.
So I've read a whole bunch of stuff. I recently picked up a bunch of really old westerns that are fun to read. They're really bad, but they're fun to read. But yeah, there's other authors out there.
My favorite Stephen King book is Bag of Bones. It might just be one of the ones that I came across first. King says that he's weak on romance, but my favorite books of his, the Fourth Dark Tower book and Bag of Bones, are when he focuses on it. It's when he stops and applies himself and goes like, oh no, I've got to get this right. Because he thinks, or is aware of, depending on your point of view, that he's not strong on it. And so when he needs to tell a story that utilizes it, he sits and he takes the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's, in my opinion.
He's a well-rounded guy. He doesn't like doing certain things, but when he does it,
like
he does
endings.
it well. Yeah.
Yeah. Like planning an ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when he has endings, I've heard recently there's a couple of times that he's actually liked the movie version better than his actual written version. Like The Mist.
A studio-produced movie usually has a pretty solid structure.
Yeah.
And he's very much not a structuralist.
Yeah. Well, his short story, The Mist, for instance, the movie that came out a few years ago,
had a heart-wrenching ending.
Yeah, it was a crazy ending, whereas he kind of went with the happy ending.
Yeah.
As happy as that book can be.
Yeah.
I haven't watched the actual TV show.
I haven't either.
I think his son is actually his daughter in the TV
There's
show.
too much media produced now, so you could never catch up on it all and produce anything. The amount of media being produced has almost created an artificial divide where it's like you are now either a producer of media or a consumer of media. Mm-hmm. You almost can't be both.
Yeah, and Stephen King's had a big year, you know?
Yes.
With the It remake, the Dark Tower atrocity that came out.
It was very bad.
I couldn't watch it.
I wrote my thesis on the Dark Tower, and I got there about 10 minutes of that movie. I was like, no, this isn't for me.
Yeah, I couldn't. I mean, the actors were great. It should have been a good movie, but no. I can't watch it. I refuse.
Yeah.
I just heard so much bad about it. But then he had Mr. Mercedes TV shows out, The Mist TV shows out. Gerald's Game came out on Netflix.
That was amazing. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet.
It's really good.
And 1922?
Yeah, 1922, also amazing.
Yeah, I got to watch that one as
well.
But another great author, now that I think on it, is Robert E. Howard. He's the guy who wrote the Conan the Barbarian books.
Oh, yeah.
The initial writer. One short novel in that collection. He's also written about Solomon Kane, which recently came out as a movie a few years ago. Which was a great movie, by the way, with James Purefoy. Yeah, Purefoy. He was in it. And he's also done stuff like Kull and Brad McMorn. And
Is it Kull?
Kull the Conqueror, yeah. Kull.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with it. It's just funny because I've always seen it as a Conan ripoff. So it's funny that he did both of them.
Yeah, the way he you got to realize what he was doing back then. It was like the 1920s. You know, he couldn't make a living writing because he lived in Texas, in a really small town in Texas. And so you can't make a living writing novels there. So he just started writing short stories and sending them off to magazines like Weird Tales magazine. And so he just wrote about things. And he had a very strong belief in civilization was kind of ruining things for everyone else. Like, he thought civilized men were horrible. So a lot of his main characters are wild men or barbarians or people who are unattached to civilization in some way.
Interesting.
Yeah, so like Conan is a barbarian from Samaria. He comes in, he ends up ruling the civilized world as a king. Kull is kind of the same way. I think some people could read it that Kull is the ancestor of Conan. He's like king, he comes from Atlantis. He's the king of Atlantis kind of thing. It's a bit weird.
Bit weird.
Bran McMorn is actually what would happen if Conan was in the real world. Like, so he's like a Celt kind of thing. Marvel
Comics did a version of that.
I think
they had
so.
a great Conan series for a long time.
Yeah. The best Conan series, comic book wise, is the recent Dark Horse ones. They have some really good ones where they actually took the stories from Robert E. Howard and told them through that.
Told them in a visual medium.
Yeah, they're really, really well done. But yeah, I found his writing is very pulpy writing. He's up there with Edgar Rice Burroughs. He has a really good way of wording things, and his action sequences are really awesome too. So that was a big influence on me recently as well.
And I see from, for those who can't see, everyone, because it's a radio show, you've got about just shy of 1 million tattoos on your arms there, but one prominent one is Edgar Allan Poe.
Yep, I have Edgar, good old Edgar. He's one of my favorite writers from childhood.
Yeah.
Actually, all my tattoos are literary based.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I have my full arm, my full sleeve is Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, he's obviously a bit of an influence on me. I have Edgar here. I got some thumb tattoos, which are in relation to Stephen King, Mr. Mercedes, and It. And I have quotation mark tattoos.
Wow.
I actually have the word literate written across my back.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I have a typewriter on my chest with my daughter's name on the paper.
Oh, that's adorable.
So, yeah, I have all my tattoos are related to literature in some way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get your own book cover tattooed somewhere when you get it out.
Yeah, I've actually been discussing this with my wife recently. I've been wanting to get some new tattoos. I want to get one for winning the 48-hour marathon, for winning NaNoWriMo, for getting stories published in Chillers, and now getting my own book published. So I have at least 4 that I need to do soon.
Accomplishments.
Yeah.
So your book, the Weird West style book, The Starving, that can be picked up. That's going to come out in May 2019.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it. I've never been part of that process, the publishing process before, so it's going to be really, really interesting to kind of be there. I can't wait for an editor to get their hands on it.
That's always a process. That's always the process of, it's either painful or it's revelatory. It's either you get it back and it's ripped to shreds, and it's always going to be ripped to shreds, first of all. But you either get it back and it's ripped to shreds and you get angry and you fight back, and that never works.
No.
Never works, because if they saw flaws, the audience is going to see flaws. Like, this is their job. Or it becomes revelatory, where it's like, oh, I didn't realize I did this right. I didn't realize I did that right. Yeah, and she's right. This, or he's right. This is a better way to do this. And this character wasn't talking in their voice. And my editor, Aaron Vance, has done a lot for me over the years. My writing's improved in leaps and bounds every time. You say, yes, Matthew, your writing has improved. You were horrible at first.
Well, I think that any writer's going to improve anyway as the years go on. The more you write, the more you're going to improve. But if you have someone who's calling you out, it's going to even improve even more.
That's true. All right. Well, thanks for coming around there, Mr. Dobbin. I look forward to reading your book in May 2019, and I will check out your short stories that have been published so far, and keep my eye on you.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.